Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's panel presentation, a webinar titled Liquid Neural Networks. This webinar is a part of the 11th annual event in the Neuroscience Virtual Events series. I am Antonina Salcido of LabRoots, and I will be your moderator for today's event. Today's educational web seminar is presented by LabRoots. Now let's get started. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone that this event is interactive. We encourage you to first participate by communicating with other attendees using our live chat feature during the presentation. You can find the live chat located at the left of your screen. You can also participate by submitting as many questions as you would like during the presentation. To do so, simply type them into the Ask a Question box and click Submit. We'll answer as many questions as we have time for at the end of the presentation. If you have trouble seeing or hearing the presentation, click on the Help Desk button located at the top of your screen within the navigation bar or from the lobby. Finally, as a reminder, this presentation is educational and offers free continuing education credits. Click on the Continuing Education Credits link located in the Abstract window below the presentation window and follow the process to obtain your credits. I now present today's speakers, Dr. Ramin Hasani, Principal AI and Machine Learning Scientist, a Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and Dr. Mathias Lechner, Postdoctoral Research Associate, Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory, also at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. For a complete biography on our speakers, please visit the Presenter tab from the menu at the left of your screen. Dr. Hasani and Dr. Lechner, you may now begin your presentation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ramin Hasani, and together with my colleague, Mathias Lechner, from the Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Lab at MIT, we are delighted to present liquid neural networks. So some of the important challenges in deep learning today is that models do not generalize well to unseen test scenarios. This is because learning theory fundamentally is designed for IID. Robustness to distribution shifts do not exist, and explainability of models is also limited due to the complexity of models and inductive biases. So it is harder to perform root cause analysis. And then another big challenge that we have is that model trains offline on offline data. They cannot, extend well to online testing when you deploy the models on board. And then, so this is due to compounding error, lack of robustness of distribution shifts, and lack of causal relationship. Models cannot capture the causal relationship of a task. At the same time, there's a big question that do deep learning models understand the task they're given or not? And by that, we mean that they can capture independent causal mechanisms in the environment or not, or there are explicit mechanisms to interact and understand. These are basically the kind of things that we have to study. So let me show you one real-world example of deep learning models in practice. This is a convolutional neural network. It receives camera inputs, and it learned to perform a driving task. Here we see the convolutional layers, and then we see also the activity of the network illustrated through the network architecture. We looked at how these networks perform decision-making, and we looked into the attention map of this network on the bottom left. We see that the attention of this convolutional network is basically outside of the road whenever it makes a driving decision. And this is not something ideal. We have to make it better because this type of representation is not very robust. And if we add a little bit of noise on top of this system, we see that the attention map, if you focus on the attention map, is completely scattered. It is true that this system might be able to perform the task, but its performance, but its decisions are not reliable. So we need to do better. How can we want to do better? The way we want to do that is by developing new models for performing flexible decision-making, models that can organize the world around them, make sense of them, to be able to control them to achieve their goals. And then we want them to have the ability to understand the world around them. By understanding, I mean interactions with the world or data to capture causality, learn abstract actions to reason, plan, and control, and inference and credit assignment, be able to perform this inference and credit assignment in new scenarios. And as a result of that, we want to improve robustness, flexibility, and accountability of models. So now this is a sneak peek into the results that we achieved. Here we have a liquid neural network. We replaced the fully connected parts of a convolutional network. As we see, the attention map here, it's drastically improved, and the focus of the network is on the road's horizon in order to take a driving decision. Now, how did we get there? Okay, this is the outline of our talk today. So we started by looking into nervous systems. We went down to the level of neural circuits to understand how the dynamics of neural circuit and how can we model them mathematically. And then we went even one level below. We looked into interaction of neurons and synapses. And we decided to stay at the level of computational modeling of interaction of neurons and synapses that is tractable for simulation. At the same time, it is more expressive in order to perform credit assignment and representation learning. Now, as a result of this kind of process, we showed that these models are like models built by inspiration from the brains and how neurons and synapses interact with each other. They're more expressive. They can handle both different types of memory, which we will talk throughout this talk. More importantly, they can capture causality and cause and effect of a given task, which is one of the fundamental properties, desired properties in machine learning systems, in modern machine learning systems. And then they also have robustness properties. We can use them for generative modeling, and we can even do extrapolation to out of distribution situations using liquid neural networks. Now, the domain that we have been focusing on was basically decision-making in closed loop. So when we have robots interacting in an environment, and this is basically the framework that we are going to present today. All right, so as the outline of the talk, we're going to talk about the model itself, liquid time constant networks. Then we're going to go through the autonomous lane keeping. We're going to showcase how liquid neural networks achieve good performance in performing autonomous driving with only 19 neurons. And then we talk about some properties of this network, such as causality. And then we'll also present some of our very recent works that was published in Nature Machine Intelligence on closed form liquid networks. All right, so let's get started. Liquid time constant networks. So if you look at the autonomy requires continuous time processes, okay? Usually when we model physical systems, they are described by differential equations. And then if you look into how these kind of systems, physical systems, give rise to sophisticated behavior, recurrence, memory, and sparsity are part of the behavior of the system. Now, inspired and motivated by these kind of elements that I mentioned before, we designed liquid time constant networks. These are continuous time neural networks. Each node in the system is described by a differential equation, by linear differential equation, as we're showing here, is a linear state space model that receives input synapses ST into a system. And then nodes in the system interact with each other through nonlinear synapses. These nonlinear synapses, if I plug in this equation of a nonlinear synapse inside the liquid neural network, then inside the state of a neuron, I would get an expression like that. Now, if you look at this expression, it is, and if we assume that we do not have recurrent connections, then we see that the F appears both into the state of the neuron and also in the time constant of the neuron. And as a result, there is an input-dependent component that drives the behavior of this differential equation, allows it to have basically a variable behavior depending on the incoming inputs. Now, in terms of block diagram, let me present you a little bit more intuitive kind of representation of this. So we have standard neural networks. The range of possible connections in a standard neural networks, basically you have activation functions where they can connect, they can have reciprocal connection, they can have recurrent connections, they can receive inputs from outside world, IFT. Now, in a liquid neural network, nodes do not have activation function, but they are described by differential equation, as we described before. And then synapses are regulated by nonlinear functions. Now, those nonlinear functions regulate the behavior between the two nodes, and also they regulate the behavior of incoming inputs. There are also possibilities for recurrent connections in the system. Now, to give you a better sense of what do we achieve if we have a liquid neural network that has a variable dynamic, here we show a system, a neuron from a system that has been, a neural network that has been trained on autonomous driving tasks to perform lane keeping in this road. And as we see on the x-axis, what we are showing here is the speed of reaction of the output neuron of the network. And as we see, for a standard neural network, this is a constant kind of value where we cannot really get much out of the system. And the color here shows the steering angle, you know. And then as we see on the liquid neural network side, as we, you know, we're tackling different situations. For example, right now we're turning towards right. So we see that the kind of time constant is changing as we're going straight or turning left or turning right. So we're adding another degree of expressivity inside a neural network, having the liquid elements. Now, these liquid neural networks, they come with certain properties. One of them is that their state is stable. If we define the time constant state and time constant of them, is if we define the time constant of this system as the coefficient of x of t, then we have theorems that shows that we can have the behavior of these neurons bounded, and that means like they would never go, you know, as a result of an infinite, you know, infinitely large input, the system would not go to infinity, so it's capped basically. So we show that for both for the state of the network and also for the time constant of the network. We also show that liquid neural networks are universal approximator, and that means that's true for all neural networks, but we have to show this because we are introducing a new model, and we want to have this property universal approximation as part of the system. Now, to better show how expressive these neural networks are, we look into a deep learning measure of expressivity of neural networks. Now, imagine I have an input trajectory. I put this input trajectory inside a neural network with n hidden layers and k neurons in each layer. Then I initialize the weights of the neural networks with this Gaussian distribution, normal distribution. Then I have ReLU activations, okay? So if I project the activation of each of these layers into 2D space, I see that as I as I go through the neural network, depths of the neural networks, the complexity of the pattern that is generated as a result of an input trajectory increases. And this complexity is measurable because we can take the arc lengths of this of each transformation, and then we can measure, and we see that there was a theoretical paper in 2017 that showed that there is a lower bound for expressivity of a neural network given its properties, its depths, its width, and its initialization properties. We perform the same thing for continuous time neural networks, such as liquid time constant networks, LTCs, continuous time RNNs, CTRNNs, and neural ordinary differential equations. These are three classes of continuous time neural networks. We want to see if we input it in a trajectory, a circular trajectory, and then project their trajectory back into a 2D space, how would their trajectory length looks like? So we did this empirically, exhaustively, with changing different parameters of a network. We saw that the more, liquid neural networks are generating more and more complex dynamics, and at the same time, they have longer lengths in their trajectory lengths. So which is kind of a representative of the expressivity of a network given its capacity. So we changed systematically some of the properties of these continuous time neural networks. For example, on the x-axis here, we see different ODE solvers. And then on the y-axis, you see the trajectory lengths. The yellow line shows the trend that, like overall, it is actually higher than, in terms of expressivity, a little bit higher than the other networks. And if you look at on the x-axis, we change the width of a neural network. And then looking into the expressivity, again, in terms of trajectory lengths, we see that LTCs are still higher in that domain empirically. And then we also observe that if we change the variance of the initialization, we can totally see that the trajectory lengths of the LTC networks are higher. And then we didn't stop there at the level of this kind of analysis, at empirical analysis. We also proved that there is a lower bound on expressivity of different types of networks, like neural ODEs, CTRNNs. And then we also found one lower bound for the expressivity of this type of networks that demonstrates that these networks are actually pretty expressive. So now that we have these expressivity results, we would like to see how would these neural networks work in practice. So this time, my colleague Mathias is going to present our results on autonomous lane keeping with liquid neural networks.
Yes. Yeah. So the idea is to test our LTC model, our liquid network, on a very complex task, in particular like end-to-end autonomous driving, where the network is trained to map input images from a camera that is mounted on top of the car to the steering command of the car in order to safely maneuver the car around the test track. And we want to test our model in relation to other models, in particular the ODE-RNN, the basically old school version of differential neural ODEs. Basically, and as well as the LSTM, the long short-term memory model, which is also kind of the kind of standard de facto standard RNN architecture, and compare this to our LTC-based network. In particular, we also test with respect to a convolutional neural network that doesn't have any recurrent feedback mechanism involved, and yes. All of these architectures basically a map, as I said before, images to the steering command. And here we see an example that Ramin showed already before of a convolutional neural network. So there's no feedback mechanism. So it's just a couple of convolutional layers followed by fully connected layers. And although this model architecture can drive the car without noise, when we add noise, basically the behavior becomes catastrophic and it crashes, because we see here on the saliency, very poor behavior. In contrast, our LTC model replaces kind of the 1,000 fully connected neurons at the end with just 19 of our LTC neurons sparsely wired together. And what we see here, so the model can drive the car successfully. And also we see on the left side the saliency map, which looks much cleaner and much more focused on the street, on the road ahead, as opposed to the CNN, which kind of also basically detected features in the surrounding. And this, as a result, is then helpful when we add noise, because under noise, our LTC-based model performs much better and still is, of course, affected by the noise, as we see in the saliency maps on the left bottom. However, still the focus is really on the road, on the actual basic causal mechanism of the task, and therefore is able to basically maneuver the car much better under noise. This is just qualitative results. Here we have quantitative results as well. When we have is shown in red the CNN, which doesn't have any feedback mechanism, and as a result, when we add noise, the performance, the number of crashes increases significantly. And then all of the recurrent neural networks, because they have a filtering and a recurrent mechanism that kind of keeps the memory of the past states, are much better, much more able to tolerate noise. And the LTC model, our LTC model in particular, was achieved the best performance under noise. So basically was able to kind of be most robust to these kind of noise attacks. Here we have a side-by-side comparison of the saliency maps of all of these different models. We see the LSTM is crashing a couple of times, and how the saliency maps of these different models compare. We see again like the features that are basically learned by the convolutional layers of these networks and by the networks. And yeah, as said before, the LTC-based model on the right-hand side is much more focused on the actual causal structure of the task, like really focusing on the road. Yes.
All right. Thanks, Mathias. So yeah, so as we saw, this is about the causality property of NCPs is something that we qualitatively observed in this autonomous lane keeping task. Now we started looking into this property a little bit more, a little bit deeper. So if we look at the taxonomy of possible modeling, at one end of the spectrum, we have statistical models. They can learn from data and they can predict in IID. Now, in the middle, we have causal graphs. A causal graph can also account for interventions, but also they require to have like the entire task structure pre-hand to be able to perform tasks. Then at the other side of the spectrum, we have physical models. Physical models are being able to learn from data. They can answer counterfactuals about the physical dynamics of the system. And then, and they can give you like a lot of insights about the system. So basically, ideally, we want to reach at a level where we have physical models to model phenomena. So within this kind of modeling framework, there is a framework it's called dynamic causal modeling. Dynamic causal modeling is a continuous time process graphical model structure where we can account for interventions and we can account for we can ask counterfactual questions, and there are specific parameters of the system that can account for that kind of interventions. And then we are entertaining a hypothesis that LTC models reduce mathematically to a dynamic causal model. All right, so let's get started building that hypothesis. So we know that differential equations can form causal behavior. Okay. So in order for a system to be causal, we wanted to be able to predict the future evolution of the system based on the past, and at the same time be able to describe effect of the interventions or ask the counterfactuals that you can ask from a system. So more formally, if you ask, let's say you set a differential equation dx over dt equal to g of x, and g of x is the nonlinearity of the system. Then based on the Picard-Lindelof theorem, you would have the, basically this system has a unique solution. And then under G being Lipschitz. And then if you perform an Euler discretization of that, then you would have a causal structure of the task, okay? Now, the dynamic causal modeling framework takes that G, but takes a bilinear approximation of that G that becomes an ODE like that with different coefficients. So coefficient A would be accounting for internal coupling of the system. Coefficient B would be kind of controls the coupling sensitivity among network nodes. And we have also another coefficient, which is C, that regulates the external inputs. Now, LTC networks, we showed in a NeurIPS 2021 paper that they are actually reducing to, their representation reduces to a dynamic causal model under two kind of conditions where tau is strictly positive. At the same time, G has to be continuous and bounded. So now let's get back to practice. So let me show you one of the examples that we have here. We train drone agents. So on the left side, you see a drone agent that sees an unstructured environment. It has been trained to move towards an object, and this object is inside this environment, and we haven't labeled anything. We didn't provide any label. We just recorded some human demonstrations of flying towards that target, and then we taught that system and then deployed it online to be able to see whether the essence of the task is being able to extract it by the LTC-based networks or not. We see on the right, when we look at the attention map of the system, as soon as the target becomes visible, then the entire attention of the system of an LTC-based system goes on the target. And that's one of the evidences that we have that these systems actually are being able to extract the causal mechanisms from data. Now, if we compare and put the saliency maps that I was showing in the previous slide next to each other for different time frames, given different inputs, given different network architectures, we see that neural circuit policies, these are neural networks, sparse neural networks enabled by the liquid neural network model. We see that these are the only models that can focus on that target in that kind of environment. So we observe the same behavior when we have multi-agent. Right now, the first-person view is a drone following the second drone that we see inside the environment. And if we look into the attention map of this process that the network has learned to follow that leader drone, we see in the multi-agent setting as well, the focus is mainly on top of that second drone from the view of the follower drone that we're showing here. All right, so liquid neural networks can capture causal structure of a task, but they come with some limitations. So one of the limitations is that they are as complex as their ODE solver. Okay, so you can expect that as the complexity of the system goes higher, the scalability of the systems becomes problematic. So there are ways to solve this problem. One of them is like using the fixed step ODE solvers. It would be a very simplistic solution. We can use sparsity to actually reduce the complexity of a neural network in order to be able to perform computation. You can also use hypersolvers to parallelize the whole process, but we provided a fundamental solution, which is the closed form version. If you can solve the differential equations in closed form, you would be able to realize faster dynamics without the need for numerical ODE solvers. Another problem that we might end up having with ODE-based network is the vanishing and exploding of the gradient, where this problem causes like difficulties in learning long-term dependencies. So we provided a solution as well to that one. It's mixed memory wrappers around those. But in the rest of the talk, Mathias is going to present for us our solution to scalable solution to liquid neural network, which is a closed form liquid neural networks.
Okay. Yeah, as Ramin mentioned before, the problem is really the ODE solver, which kind of comes with this computational cost of requiring like the basically solver to simulate the solution. And this is doing training as well as doing inference time. So this is really problematic. And in our idea was really to get rid of this kind of ODE solver by deriving a closed form solution. So what we did is we looked at the ODE equation, the differential equation of a single neuron that perceives certain like stimulus from via synapses from other neurons. And for this single neuron, we then derived like a closed form solution that basically encodes the time dynamics of the neuron activation. And as a result, the time complexity is now much better than before. If you look at like a typical ODE solver, which is like a P order, like Runge-Kutta or more advanced adaptive step size solvers, they require like per time step an additional P of like the number of basically solver steps that run during each step. And we need to multiply this by the length of the input sequence. So if you have k inputs, we have k times p ODE solver steps that we actually need to compute. So it becomes like problematic. And if you have like adaptive step size solvers, which are more accurate, however, like even then becomes problematic because like we have like unknown runtime dynamics, right? So it could like be unpredictable essentially how long it take to inference our network. In contrast, our CFC, the closed form continuous time neural networks which is another basically the closed form variant of the LTC model, This is absolutely not relevant because we don't we just in each time step just to make a single prediction that basically encodes the solution of the time dynamics. And yeah, the same as I said before, mentioned before, the same holds for sequence and for time step prediction. Basically reduces the complexity compared to ODE RNNs by removing the need for an ODE solver. We also provided a mathematical theorem, like to basically see how accurate our closed form expression is, and in particular for a given LTC initial value problem determined by the ODE of the LTC model. We constructed by one cell receiving a single dimensional time series input I of t with no self connections. The closed form expression that we have is an approximation of the closed form solution by this sharpness result. So this is basically that we bound the difference between the ODE, the solution of the closed form solution, and the solution when we run an ODE solver. That these two basically signals are bounded, like in a way, like they're close together. And this is basically just a mathematical theorem, but here we also visualize this by having like the ODE solution of the ODE solver in red, and the closed form solution that we derived in blue shifted by a certain factor. And we see like this actually very close to the original signal. We also made a couple of modifications because like we don't just care about the network itself, but also that it's efficient. We don't care just about efficiency, but also from a machine learning perspective that we basically learn a nice function in a way, a certain function. And what we added to our model is certain kind of advancements from the machine learning community that we also incorporated in our network. The first one is to have like to have a backbone network, basically where we share the representation that is learned, and then basically branch out in multiple heads that each of them correspond to a certain function. And we also replaced, for instance, the exponential term by a sigmoid function, because it has shown that the exponential function basically becomes zero very quickly, which is like problematic for gradient perspective when we actually want to learn this thing by backpropagation. An exponential function causes like vanishing or exploding gradients, and the sigmoid function is a bit better behaved in a way. And some of these kind of advancements we also incorporated into like this CFC cell that we proposed. And on the next slide, we will see the empirical performance. So basically, we took this network, CFC network, and tested it and compared it with like a couple of other approaches based on from the recurrent neural networks literature. And here we have like the bitstream XOR classification sequence, where the model basically needs to learn to classify a bit sequence, input sequence, and our CFC-based model performed much better on the event-based encoding, where we have like time continuous dynamics of the input representation. And we also tested the PhysioNet benchmark, which is mortality prediction, like in I think hospital also after admission. And also here we show very strong performance, in particular CFC without gate. This variant are outperforming the other approaches in terms of the AOC, the area under curve score, as well as the time it takes to train and run these networks. We show significant advancements over these ODE-based networks, which still like perform well, but like at a very high computational cost. We also tested it on text natural language processing, in particular the IMDb sentiment analysis dataset, where also basically the CFC cell outperforms like standard recurrent neural networks, such as like the LSTM and all related architectures on that. And finally, also did some kinematic modeling or some dynamical system modeling, essentially. And again, we see like very strong performance of the CFC-based networks that we have. So in conclusion, maybe Ramin will draft the conclusion.
Okay, yeah, I can do that. So All right. So what we showed today was different flavors of liquid neural networks, and we see that they have they show great promise in generalization on the distribution shifts as a result of their being causal and their network architecture. And at the same time, we showed that both the liquid neural network model is available both in ODE form and in the closed form, and depending on the application, we could choose to go to any of them. And this actually concludes our talk, and I just want to invite you to check out our repositories, very popular ones for NCPs or neural circuit policies. You can check the first one. You can get hands-on with LTC-based models. And for closed form network, you can reproduce the result of the paper in the CFC repository, that the second repository that we show, but NCPs could be a repository like very well documented. And I'm pretty sure like you're gonna enjoy playing around with the LTC models. And also feel free to get in touch with us if you have any questions and interest in liquid neural networks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hasani and Dr. Lechner, for your informative presentations. We will now start the live Q&A portion of the webinar. If you have a question you'd like to ask, please do so now. Just click on the Ask a Question box located on the far left of your screen. Now let's get started. Our first question here is, what are the next steps for liquid neural networks?
Yes, so maybe I can take this. Yeah, so the idea, I mean, we have to see how we can scale. I mean, the technology is just very fresh, and we have been applying the technology in the domain of like autonomous control of robots and time series modeling. And it would be nice to apply the technology also to text data and different like trying multimodality and different types of in various different types of applications. And yeah, like we are open to the community to actually come with their own use cases, because the technology is open sourced and people can use it. And obviously, if there are new people have new ideas and they want to discuss with us about their use case and they need help in their process, we would be open to discussions as well. Mathias, if you want to add something.
Yeah, I think the next steps, for the liquid network, is trying to find more actually where these networks perform well, and also obviously figure out where they don't work as well, like compared to other approaches, to really test like the limitations. Also, what Ramin mentioned, the size, because we have seen like from standard machine learning literature that size seems to be really important and enable a lot of like awesome applications. So also here we want to test really like what's the limit, like can we increase the size from these 19 neurons to something bigger, and then see also improvements in performance. So that's for us like the next steps.
Thank you for that. I think we have a question about the application, but it's not super specific. Do you two have anything else to ask one another, to discuss about the topic?
Yeah, maybe just to quickly like relate to the question with the application. Basically, we have this NCPS repository. It's also a Python package actually that people can install and use. And we have implemented like our liquid networks and the LTC model as well as this CFC model for both TensorFlow and PyTorch. And we made the API such that it's very naturally to other recurrent neural networks. For instance, there's this LSTM architecture in PyTorch or in Keras available. And we try to basically replicate the same user interface for this as the LSTM, so that people, because most code that you find out there uses kind of standard RNNs, LSTMs, So to make it really accessible and for people to switch and try out whether like these liquid networks can help with the application, if they have already like code that is written in PyTorch and TensorFlow.
Thank you for that. We do have another question that came in here for one of you. From which domain did you get the data from your time series forecast experiments?
Yes, so we did apply to a bunch of real-world test sets. Some of them were from medical data and detecting mortality rate of people from time series and the vital signals. We had activity recognition, human activity recognition from the sensors mounted on a body. We had financial time series. We had what else did we have? Like robotics time series as well, like states of robots. And yeah, so I would say we have been in the domain of like time series, we have been applying this to a lot of different use cases.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, just to quickly like connect to Ramin's point. Yeah, we applied it like to several data sets. A lot of them from the UCI repository. Like there's this famous machine learning repository out there that's has like a huge variety of data sets, but like at the same time they're kind of older in a way and like smaller. So yeah, so I think that's connects to the point, the first question that Ramin answered with the future of trying to see like how well these models behave on larger data sets.
Thank you. Do either of you two have any final comments for our audience?
I mean, one comment that I have, like if we have neuroscientists on board, it would be nice to see, because now the model that we developed like these liquid neural networks are brain-inspired systems. So we took models of biology, biological neurons and synapses, and then we solved this equation in closed form. Now, the closed form version of a liquid neural network is called CFC, as we presented today in the presentation. It would be nice to see how we can do brain simulations and use this model as a tool, as a new tool to do larger scale brain simulations. Because one of the burdens of simulating nervous system dynamics is the differential equations, and the computations becomes complex so fast. So with the closed form solution, that's basically a new front. This is the latest paper that we published in Nature Machine Intelligence. It's called closed form continuous time neural networks. And this is the version that I think there's a huge potential for people from neuroscience and data science. If they think that a computational neuroscience, if they have data sets available to them from neural activities, and then they want to apply neural models, biophysical neural models, I think the closed form has the potential to be investigated further from the computational neuroscience aspects of things. And this is an area that we have been far away from for a while now, but it would be nice to get a feedback from the neuroscience community to see if we can do anything further.
Great, thank you. Anything from you, Dr. Lechner, before we close?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, yeah, please check out like our repository. Like it's called NCPS. If because I'm just reading the question with the application again. Like, yeah, that's on our GitHub repository. If you want to try these models, and let us know your feedback, as Ramin mentioned.
Thank you so much again for both your time today and your important research. Before we go, I'd like to thank the audience for joining us today and for those interesting questions. Any questions we did not have time for, or those submitted during the on-demand period, will be addressed by the speakers via the contact information you provided at the time of registration. This webcast can be viewed on demand for 2 years until March 8th, 2025, and LabRoots will alert you via email when it's available for replay. We encourage you to share that email with any one of your colleagues who may have missed today's live event. Until next time, goodbye.